Call to order the 879th meeting of the Board of Directors of MSAD 27. Any adjustments to the agenda?
I'll take roll call first. Keith Jandro. Her Susi.
Here.
Jacob Terrio.
Here.
Toby Jandro.
Here.
Gary Ouellette. Here. Gary Sibley.
Here.
Sarah Ashley. Here.
Now any adjustments to the agenda?
Yeah, we'll have an executive session. Actually, if we move the new hires right to the end of the agenda, and then have an executive session about those new hires, if we can do that, that would be the best way to do it, so that folks don't have to leave and come back.
We need a motion.
I'll need a motion at that time, and I'll have to look up what the correct motion is.
I was just wondering if we needed a motion to change the agenda.
No, I think we can just adjust it.
And I'd like to also, I think Dan Stockford would like to give us an update, so we're gonna need 2 executive sessions. Another one to talk to him, an executive session as well.
Approval of minutes for the meeting 8/77, May 18, 2020.
Should we, Mr. Vice Chair, should we check if any public participation?
Oh, sorry.
That would just speak.
Must be East. Steve Kerr.
Do I do now, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
I'm Steve Karen, I'm a kid around the area. We weren't able to make it the last one because we were planning. I'm speaking from my own farm, but I think for the most of what I'm gonna say applies to everybody, all the other growers. We cannot stress the importance of harvest rate for us. I don't think having the suggestion of having school anyway and letting the kids that can work go, I call it pass parents that 50% of them said there's no way they'd let their kids do that. They wouldn't let them to school at all. And I believe that because we tend to go past harvest break. I mean, we usually can't do it in the 2 weeks. And we lose half the kids right there. So we struggle, we get other kids, and, you know, so I know it would be a complete struggle if we had to do this without the harvest break. So I just wanted to be here to say that. And, you know, to remind, this is a community. And we as growers, we always try to help snowmobile trails, hiking trails, ATV trails, hunting. I mean, we give it to barbecues, we give the potatoes to fundraisers, we do all kinds of stuff, you know. Property taxes. But, you know, we do ask for a harvest break in return. And, you know, when it's like the big wheel and you pull a spoke out, sometimes things get kind of rough. And I hate to see that, you know, because it's a pretty dedicated group here, even though I know we're not many left. We're standing together. We might have different colored tractors, but we're pretty united. We really need this harvest rate. I mean, I don't see it working any other way for us. That's all I gotta say. And I wasn't aware. I only found out today, so I was gonna have numbers prepared and stuff, but I didn't have time for it, so I just kind of showed up.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Anyone else that didn't sign up want to say anything?
Pretty much summed it up.
Yeah, we need the kids. I know what about it.
Can I say one more thing? My wife told me at the last meeting, you know, there was only 15% of the kids were, and that's probably true. But 7% of my crew is kids. I mean, it's not like we're hiring kids because we want to save money. That's who's available. I mean, it's as simple as that.
Gary, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
At one point, Sarah at the last meeting raised the idea of, I think you were in school not long, around the same time I was.
Yeah.
Remember we used to do harvest for the older people, but none for the elementary school? Does your group have a strong opinion on that either way?
As far as farmers,
Yeah.
No, as far as taxpayers, it was cost.
that was the reason to go back. it
wasn't cost effective.
it wasn't cost effective to have the two schools.
Do we have that number?
It's just a transportation number, and we had calculated that before, and I don't remember, I would guess what it is, $8 or $9 grand, I think, for 2 weeks of transporting extra. It wasn't, there's no extra personnel because your custodian bus drivers are already working.
Yeah.
So there's no extra cost other than the transportation itself,
There is extra salary because they'd be working longer days
for those two, yeah, that
for
period.
those 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Moving on, the approval of minutes for the 877th meeting, May 18, 2020.
So moved.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Approval of the meetings for the special meeting number 878, June 4th, 2020.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Approval of financial statements for May 2020. Read sheets.
Oh, at the end.
A motion?
Oh, so moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Unanimous. Superintendent's report.
I did share with you your recent update from the State Department. They put out this, it's on the big screen, Return to Classroom Instruction Framework. It is a working draft, and we've been reminded 50,000 times by the Commissioner, this is a draft, it is not a final document, but it is the department's initial plan for how schools can return. And it does cover 5 parts. The first is physical health and safety. The second is social, emotional, behavioral, and mental health. The third is academic programs and student learning. The fourth is common foundations for remote learning, so refining remote learning. And then the last one is additional considerations. We've shared with you our Valley Unified Reintegration Plan, and I don't know, this is pretty much what we have as well. Almost kind of strange, eerie, so I guess we're right along the right track. With this plan, it's very, very prescriptive, especially when you get to the preparing for the physical health and safety. We had a Zoom meeting with the Commissioner today, spoke about this a little bit, and spoke about the return to school and what her thoughts are about that. And the Commissioner was very clear on a couple of things. Number one, the Department of Education will never take a stance on telling communities whether or not they should return to school. It's not their, they don't have control over that. They can give us guidance, they can give us the tools, but everything's a local decision, we all know that. So locally, only we can decide if we're going to return to school or not. That's if the governor has not put a state of emergency. If the governor has put a state of emergency or an executive order, that trumps everything. But let's just, for the sake of argument, say she has not extended her executive orders by the time school starts. It is our choice whether or not we want to go back to school. So we had questions about that and whether or not the department is going to give us some framework on how we communicate that with our families. She said what they're working on right now is a framework that's going to basically provide levels throughout the state of what they feel the danger is with respect to COVID-19. And she used Aroostook County as an example of what right now would be considered green because of our low cases of COVID-19. York County, on the other hand, would be red because of their high level of COVID-19. And with each tier of emergency, I guess, there would be varying guidance. She said this one right here, this return to school guidance, would be the most extreme. So your red communities, your red zones would have to follow this plan pretty much to a T because it is in alignment with the CDC guidelines. She did say, however, as you scale back to a yellow or to a green, some of these would lighten up and we'd have minimal restrictions upon us. One example she used was the busing concerns. Right now, as you know, the CDC guidelines say that only one student can be in a seat every other seat unless they're family members. So realistically, we figured out we could put 14 to 15 kids on a bus. We don't have enough buses to bring all our kids in if we're only going to put 14 or 15 kids on a bus. She did say that if we're in a green zone, that might be double. It might be, it might even be the full bus. So she said those guidances are coming out soon. They want to provide that code system so that we have talking points that we can have with our community about our plan for returning to school. In the meantime, we're having conversations. We had a superintendent's meeting with the commissioner and then with just the superintendents for Aroostook County. And we realized that, we're all going to be very different in the way we plan things. Smaller schools are going to be able to have a little more flexibility than larger schools. I stayed on the line with Mr. Doak afterwards because the Caribou schools are about the same size as our schools and talked about, what some different thoughts are. Without a doubt, I think we know that our priority has to be getting our youngest students in the classroom. We know that our pre-K, K1, 2, maybe even 3, maybe even 4, the kids that need a live teacher in front of them, the kids that need, somebody making sure that we're going to need to really make that our priority because through this phase of remote learning, the parents were their teacher, and that's very difficult when you have working parents that can't give their children that time. I'm not saying that we ignore the other grade levels, but we know that the other grade levels, especially middle high school level, they can do a remote learning plan a little more successfully because they're self-guided. So these are just some of the thoughts, conversations we're having right now around that priority is probably going to have to be pre-K, K1, 2, 3. We walked around the elementary school today. We figured by the most stringent guidelines, if we have to use that 6-foot distance within a classroom, we can put in A wing, B wing, and C wing about 10 students per classroom and have that distancing set in place. If we had to put 10 students in a classroom, we would have to maximize all of the space in that building. So looking at the library as a classroom, looking at the PT/OT therapy rooms as a classroom, taking that teacher lounge, making it a classroom. So maximizing all that space. If the governor or the DOE comes out with this new, what I explained a while ago, this green, yellow, red phase, that might be all moot. If we're in a green phase, they might say you can open schools this way, and we're going to plan accordingly that way. So right now we're planning, but we're waiting for this guidance. It was good to hear the commissioner have that that mindset that we have to treat Maine differently as regions and not as a whole state. What's happening in York County is very different than Aroostook County, so we should be planning very differently. So we were very optimistic about that. So I'll keep you guys updated as we find out more, but I think we're really in a good place with our planning. We had this comprehensive PD at the end of the school year, and you know, it was a lot of work, but we really feel like we put our teachers in a good place to be prepared for if we need remote learning in the future. We have a common understanding of a common platform that we're going to use in Google Classroom. We're going to be using Zoom as the only live mode of communication. There will be, for youngers, still the availability to use some of the platforms they were using with success, like the Facebook groups and that type of thing, but we know that from our data, when we polled the parents, polled the students, polled the teachers, it was loud and clear. We need consistency, we need a hub for learning, we need a one-stop shop place to go to help our kids. We can't be going 50,000 different places. We trained our teachers on all of those things. We had some really good collaborative conversations around remote learning standard operating procedures and common practices, both for teachers and for students. So we really feel that we're in a good place. We're going to continue this summer encouraging some of our teachers to go a little bit deeper into some PD if they so want to, and that's always what we offer in the summer, is just some optional PD. But for right now, we're really appreciative of that time, so we thank you for allowing us to have that PD time. It was definitely well worth it. That's all I have with COVID-19 updates.
When you talk about guidance from the DOE, is it truly guidance, or is that just a soft way of saying directives? Or do we truly have the ability to set it the way we want it?
Yeah, and she was loud and clear. Giselle can attest to that. Local control. Local control will be what you have unless the governor says otherwise. The governor is the only one that can trump your local control. They will make sure that you're within guidance from CDC and that type of thing. You know, if all of a sudden Aroostook County has an outbreak of COVID-19, we go into a red zone and we're still operating willy-nilly like full classes, whatever, I don't think that we'll get away with that. But I think they're truly looking at Maine as, this is rural Maine, let's treat them as rural Maine, and let's let them plan for what their realities are, which is good.
You know, Ben, as I listen to you, I guess I'm okay with the whole notion of the primary grades and getting the primary students back into the classroom. My biggest concern would be because I teach obviously high school, my biggest concern are the kids that are 14, 15, 16 years old and what's happening in their families. And if there's going to be impact in terms of domestic violence,
Yep.
if there's going to be impact on sexual violation and abuse and rape and whatnot, it's going to happen to that group of individuals. And the stress factor of suicide and all of that plays into it. So I think that Department of Education is one piece, but the Department of Human Health and Welfare has to step up to the plate and can't simply be completely exonerated at this point and back off and say, well, we can't. I think they need to start working collaboratively, because we are going to create some major problems with these young people.
Yeah. You know those student remote learning plans that we all did at the end of the year, where
Yeah.
we're going to take a good look at that. There's got to be some kids throughout the grades we have to bring back just because they were not successful in remote learning.
Yeah.
So regardless of what our plan is for, you know, really attacking that lower grade level, there's going to be some higher grade level kids that are going to have to be in here because either they're not safe or they're not doing anything, and we need them to continue their growth.
Yeah.
So looking at the success model, because some students, I mean, I've spoken with families that, you know, mom and dad are like, my kid flourished in remote learning. You know, they didn't have to deal with all of the interruptions from their peers. And so there are some success stories, but there are definitely some stories that are scary, like you shared.
Ben, can you, when you're putting together your plan, can you make that piece of it, the HHS and then whatnot, just to say there's students and parents will have easy access to these services?
We can make our services easily accessible, so we have part of, one of our teams is that mental health and social emotional group where our social workers are working with our nurses. We're coming up with a better plan on how we can do child check-ins, for that piece. We can't direct DHHS to do anything because DHHS does their own thing. It's difficult at times, especially when we're dealing with our pre-K students who need services and they're not offering those services even though they're qualified for services. So it's difficult with DHHS.
Can you invite them to a meeting so we can have a frank discussion with them? That's a bad idea.
DHS is taking away more kids than they ever have in recent history.
So
The
we don't wanna
court
give
is
them.
overflowed with kids being removed from their
Okay.
homes. They've run out of lawyers and they're busing them in from Bangor to take more kids away. We've never had such a spike. It's a fallout from, remember a couple of years ago, there was a couple parents that killed their daughter?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, we used to have this thing called safety planning, where when a kid was in jeopardy, the department would step in and say, let's build a safety plan. And that was one of their tools in the toolbox as well. In that particular case, they used a safety plan when the kid died. So the department, being a state agency, was reactive. So they threw away their wrench, and they said, we're not using that tool anymore. The only tool they have left is to snatch kids. They don't do safety planning anymore, so everyone's being removed. The courts are overflowing. The only thing that's keeping it afloat right now is the fact that the courts are only doing child protective right now. Like, they're full. We couldn't encourage them to be more aggressive because they don't have enough people to take any more kids.
I don't want them to be aggressive. I want them to be proactive.
Oh, they're being proactive,
Okay,
to a fault.
okay,
They're very, very proactive.
okay.
So, yeah, I think we should take care of us.
Okay.
DHS has got taking kids away from people down to an.
No, I don't want that to happen.
Full disclosure, my mother-in-law and father-in-law both did that for a living, and they're good at it. Like, that's what they do.
Okay.
They rehabilitate. They do good work too. But I think the emergency step-in, I think we should stay in our lane. Let them do it. They've got the statute for it. They've got the manpower for it, and they've got the support.
I
to
guess
do
the
it.
bigger question is, Ben, do we have the bandwidth to deal with potential needs of our students?
It's the same as our academic needs, right? I think we'll do the best that we can, and we'll definitely reach the ones that want to be reached. It's the ones that we can't reach that are a concern. So one thing that we phased in at the end of the remote learning plan, because we finally got permission to do so, was to notify law enforcement when we haven't heard from kids in X amount of days, to please go to these homes and check in. That's gonna be part of our weekly ongoing plan as we move forward, if we have to go into remote learning. And it's not punitive, it's not to have their kids taken away, it's like, hey, we need to know where your kids are, we're concerned here. So that's all part of it.
And there's another secondary agency that handles calls like that. That's not the department. It's a private agency, and they'll often make phone calls and do checks.
Okay.
So there is a safety net out there. Most people luckily don't have to engage it, but it's out there.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you. We're at the think tank.
I think that, Toby, you wanna give an update on
Sure. We met, when did we meet? I don't know.
The ninth.
The 9th. We met the 9th. It was a good meeting. Well, it was a good meeting in that we voiced our concerns that the board had kind of given us to talk about. It was the issue of proportional voting. We raised the issue of, we had some discussion on K through 12 versus 7 through 12 for the RSU. And we also talked about some of the anomalies and issues with site selection. I don't feel like we were unheard. I don't feel like people were terribly responsive either. One thing that was interesting was that, I think a lot throughout this process, we have really felt like things are always in a state of flux. And it was interesting to hear the gentleman from Madawaska, whose name escapes me, Louis, basically say this feels like a giant shell game. And it was a little heartening to hear that we weren't the only ones feeling like just when we think we know what's happening, it's changing. That was good. other people that were there, like from the other schools, they agreed to bring it back to their boards. And that was something that, Mr. Jardin said, I think he was actively said that. I think Madawaska also agreed that they would bring it back to their boards and discuss it more fully with their boards and get back to us. I think we're planning on doing another one of these.
Well, when we left the meeting, one of the consensus the group had was it would be nice to get the commissioner to come sit with the think tank and pick her brain. So I reached out to the commissioner's office. She's actually willing to come up. It's going to be either the week of August 17, is that a Monday? Or August 20, one of the last 2 weeks of August, right, where about when we're supposed to start school. So I've given her some dates, I shot them out, and we're just waiting. So the commissioner will be coming up to meet with our think tank.
Okay. So, how did it go with the other boards when they discussed this?
They haven't yet.
They haven't. Did they just decide not to, or?
No, we haven't had, so we had a 33 meeting yesterday, but it was just for budget. We have a meeting tomorrow with Madawaska. We haven't had a regular meeting with those boards yet.
Okay. I'd be really curious to see what they have to say. I mean, I think that that's imperative for us moving forward.
Yeah.
I mean, a couple of things I walked away from that meeting with a little concern about was Giselle, you said something and I may have misheard you. I wanted you to talk about it again if you could. Something about the way the votes would have been counted for the straw poll. Like I
don't recall saying anything.
It was something about how they were gonna count the aggregate votes, they weren't gonna count per town, they were gonna just count the total votes for the entire region, and that the Board of Education, something, do you remember something like that? And we were talking about.
We had the option, if you guys remember, we were given
We
the
did,
option
yeah,
A,
yeah.
B, or C. I think that's what Giselle was referring to, that we all opted to have the SAD vote count, not the total populace vote count. But I think what the confusion was some of what you guys heard from the commissioner was that the state board was not gonna make that determination, it was a local determination, but we've been told all along that is a state board determination. The state board looks at your data and decides if your project moves forward. This is definitely priority question number one I have for the commissioner and for Scott Brown, because that's what we've been told all along.
Okay, so I must have misunderstood, because I thought we were, like I heard that, I didn't, but we were talking about other stuff, I didn't wanna break the routine. If there's anything else we covered. Gary, was there anything else?
I think it'd be fair to say that they understood our position of, we're paying the lion's share of it, but we only get a third of the vote. And when putting them in the position of saying, put yourself in our shoes, reverse the roles. Yeah, I mean, they can see where we're at, they can see it's not a good spot. Their willingness to change anything, I don't think is very high on the scale at all. When Josh had said no, well, Josh from 33 said, well, no, we don't want to give up our vote. That's Mary. So I put it to him and said, okay, if you don't want to give up your vote, then would you be willing to pay a third? We'll split it up. Each district will pay 33%. No, we can't do that. But you have to have a third of the vote, or we can't pay it. So, I don't know, it's probably gonna be a stalemate on that. So, I mean, we basically told them that proportional voting, proportional representation, we have to have that now, not 5 years down the road when the school's built. And we have to revisit site selection because of all the issues that we have and presented.
Toby, I just went back to my notes and
Yeah.
to see where we were in that conversation. What I spoke about was the meeting originally that we had with the Department of Education, where we were told that we could count the straw poll as a as a full count or as individuals, or we were told it was basically Valley Unified's choice at that point. Or I believe the individual school committees, so,
When that refers to the vote, we had to decide how we would count the vote, right?
this happened way before,
Yeah.
a year ahead of time.
Right, whether it was by town, by district, or.
Right.
Yeah, and we voted to do it by district.
Correct,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think,
There was another question too, I just saw the question. Whether or not a board member could serve on two boards, and I think Ben was gonna check into that.
yeah. And? Okay.
Toby,
Just checking.
you know better.
I know. Can ask. There was this pregnant pause. Another thing that was interesting in the thing was I feel like, I know it's hard for you guys to believe because you know Gary and I think we were probably selling this softer than you would imagine we would. I don't think we were being terribly bullish. I don't think so.
No, I
But I think we need to find a different way to approach the issues because at one point, one of the members said, why would we possibly agree to enter into something that would give us less power than what we're paying for, one of the other towns? And I'm thinking, that's exactly what we're saying was happening to us. And I realized that maybe we're not being forceful enough in our convictions, that it's not being clear. It was a little frustrating. I felt like for me, that was the end of the meeting because I realized that it didn't feel like we were being heard. Because we're sitting there going, why should we pay 51% and get 33% of the vote? And then Gary had recommended, well, why don't you agree to just pay 33%, SAD 33 or whatever, pay a third? And their response was, well, that wouldn't be fair. Why would we pay more than what we have kids? That's not, And it's like, well, that's kind of what we're doing. Like, but it didn't feel like.
I think they have to think about it. Digest it.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not. I wish I was optimistic, but I'm not. I don't come into the world that way.
So our next Valley Unified Board meeting, what do we do?
We're not having that for a while, right, Ben?
July 20th.
So,
Well, I mean, Ben, you'd mentioned something too about the potential of there being legislation that would allow Valley Unified to act like an RSU. Has anything been proposed?
No, there.
You said the chances were slim to none,
Yeah,
but is that
it's-
out there?
No, that's only if we request the special and private law.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be something that we were told basically don't count on that, because they've done some special and private laws in the past, and legislators don't like those at all.
Okay. I mean, is there any pending legislation right now that's out there that's involving this? Okay. So, is there anything going on at the DOE and Board of Education right now?
With regards to us?
Yes.
Oh, no, everything's on a standstill until we start having conversations about RSUs and agree as 3 school boards that we're entering those conversations.
Now, the Board of Education had a meeting, I think in June or May. Did they cover us at all?
I can go back and check the notes, but
Okay.
don't believe they would have.
Okay. There was one last thing that came up. I was looking through an old email and I found some reference, and I think it's something we need to bring to the think tank that we had mentioned last time. Back in June, there was legislation that was passed that gave Valley Unified the ability to bond, independent of the SADs and the communities. And I don't know if I fully understood that that's what was going on. And I don't remember it terribly well. But it's something I think we need to discuss. Because right now, as it stands, Valley Unified could decide to borrow $10 million. We would get a third of the vote, which would mean we would not win. Frenchville and Madawaska could bind us to $5.1 million in bonding without our individual communities voting on it. And prior to that, we would have the ability, our board would process that and say, do we want a bond? And then we'd send it to our voters. But this is the way that the statute was written, I think we need to, that should have at least been a 7/9 issue Because when we agreed to the bonding issue, the law didn't permit Valley Unified to bond. And then the statute changed it changed in June of last year, allowing Valley Unified to bond on behalf of Valley Unified for its member constituents. So I mean, we're now in a position where if two other towns decide that we're gonna borrow money, we're gonna borrow money. And we can't not do it. I know it makes me uncomfortable. Does it make anybody else uncomfortable? Farmers, how do you feel about that? So, I don't know.
Looking at the state board minutes, school construction committee did not meet in March, did not meet in April, and they were slated to meet in May. I don't have the June minutes yet, so nothing on us.
So yeah, I think, I don't know, what do you guys think? Is that something else we should bring to the table in the think tank? The bonding issue? Is it worth talking about?
Our budget, what's the, what are the 7 nights votes for again?
Budget.
You'd think that this would,
It's explicit in the rule, bonding is just a majority, it's just,
so, but it makes sense that if we've made the decision at VU, or VU's made the decision that anything budgetary, I mean, it shouldn't be a hard push to say that that was not our intent as a group of us, and we don't wanna force any of that.
well,
And yes, suggest that we do that.
so suggest the 7 nights.
I would say so, it's budgetary, right?
Well, but it's
And
not, it has its own law.
I understand, but by that thinking, it should be 7 nights, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would agree, but it's explicitly
But we can
majority.
decide, VU can't decide to say, I know it says that, but we're gonna do it differently?
No, we'd have to change the rules.
Your local agreement?
Like I said, when we agreed into local agreement, it wasn't like
Right,
it
no,
could
but-
bond,
But if we're good,
and now we can.
right, so your point is saying that if we're gonna make adjustments to in the local agreement, that could be one of the changes?
Correct.
Okay, so that's something Gary and I should bring to the table?
I would say so.
Gary?
Oh, I think so, most definitely.
Kerr?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Is there anything else, Gary?
If I may, I think that that is a fair thing to bring to the VU board. There was never an intent to be controlling on budget issues, and I agree with Sarah that that's very much related. So I don't see the VU board going against a supermajority for a bond. That's a big item.
Mhm.
I hope you're right.
I can't see anything.
Are the other school boards meeting before the Valley Unified meeting then?
Yep, like I said, Madawaska's tomorrow. 33, we haven't set a date for July, but we're gonna have to meet in July before the Valley Unified.
I wouldn't mind, when's our next meeting, is it August 17th?
We don't have one scheduled for July. You know, we're gonna have to have meetings to sign warrants, we're gonna have to have a meeting to approve,
Okay.
so we'll have meetings.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
Any correspondence or announcements?
I have no correspondence, no announcements.
Administrative reports, none. Committee reports,
None?
items of business, old business. Now, we originally tabled the school calendar harvest break for July. Do we need to make that motion to?
We can, my only intent was to give you an update on the SAD 33 board. It wasn't to make decisions, but I did have, the first one, item A, RFP for legal services. We received one RFP back from our, posting, and it is the outfit of Brendan Isaacson. I don't know if anybody wants to look at the RFP, but I have it here. We can make a decision to go with Brendan Isaacson. I can resubmit for another RFP, see if we get more interest at that time. I don't know how you guys wanna proceed, but that's what we have right now for legal counsel.
Gary, can I see that?
What's the general synopsis of that, without having to read it?
It's, I mean, it's a boiler, it's generally what firms offer.
I don't have a strong opinion. It's just, it's a pitch paper saying, this is what we're gonna do, we're awesome. I mean, that's what I would write too, even if it wasn't true. But that's what they all do, I mean, engineers do it, everybody does it.
Come on now.
Yeah, no, I know. I mean, I'm not, I don't know if at this point, the lawyers we retained before could even come in the middle of what we're doing. I think they'd be conflicted out. What's their names? Yeah. I mean, even if they wanted to bid, I don't think that we'd have to put them in a box. So, but you had some, you were wanting to use them for some of our special ed stuff.
Yeah, we've, and you guys have approved that, so we continue to use Drummond Woodson for special ed. And then you did give permission for us to use them for the bond bank, for the
Safety this.
yeah, the
Yeah, yeah.
construction grant that we got for.
That was just to hold money.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't know. Do you have a strong opinion, Gary?
I don't, not that much. I mean, we've had a good experience with them so far.
Yeah. Sarah?
That's kind of we started down the path.
Jake?
I don't know, I just,
Your excitement's just overwhelming.
it's pouring out of me. I have no opinion otherwise.
Oh, fine.
You wanna move to accept this?
Sure, I will move to accept.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion?
So it's been out there since May, right?
Yeah, we put in the Portland Press Herald, the Bangor Daily,
In
and
May.
Kennebec Journal in April or May, I think. I can't remember. COVID-19.
It was out there for a couple of weeks, I believe.
Yeah, we had it recurring 3 Wednesdays in a row.
Yeah.
And we can have frank discussions with them, or Ben will, right, considering what's going on right now otherwise, right, so.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous?
Gary, I wanted to circle back real quick to administrator reports. Is that fine? Can you talk about graduation real quick? I heard everyone loved it that I've spoken to.
It was, I'm speaking as a dad right now, it was truly remarkable. I think in talking with the folks that were there, I think in looking at the students' reaction, I think we're gonna be doing soccer field graduations or having them requested on an annual basis. If you look at any of the footage, the drone footage was amazing when you could see all of the family members surrounding the students, and then they're in that half circle. It was just, it was really memorable, and I'm proud that we were able to provide these kids who had so much taken away from them a really memorable graduation. And they kind of hijacked the end a little bit and celebrated together, which, you know, we can't, you know, be out there telling them to social distance. I don't blame them for wanting to at least just gather at the end, throw their hats up. I think it was very fitting. But yeah, it was amazing. Kudos to John Coletta, Steve Doucette, for really working hard. We had Kathy Sivany. I mean, they really worked hard to make sure that all the details were there. I mean, from everything from when one of the kids went up and spoke. They were replacing the mic with a new cover, wiping the mic off with, you know, wipes, sanitizing wipes. I mean, every detail was really, really well thought out, although the about 5 to 10 minutes before the graduation, the diplomas were still in the safe, so we had to run in quickly to go get the diplomas, because those had been forgotten, but everything else was just amazing.
Cool.
It was great.
What do you think, Aaron?
Same as Ben, speaking from a dad, but my daughter was very, very happy with it. She's actually glad it happened that way, and I think in the future, that's the way we should do it. I truly have not heard one negative comment about that ceremony at all, nothing.
Usually I get a call the next morning, nothing, not an email, not a text, not a call. Yeah,
Congratulations. Thank you.
yeah, it was wonderful.
We are pressing on bleachers.
We have to, so.
We'll keep you posted.
Yeah, the only thing, I did put the school calendar, harvest break on there as something to revisit, just so that you know, the SAD 33 board also had quite a few farmers in attendance. We gave them the same presentation. They understood our position in trying to make school work with harvest, but in the end, the same concerns, that students will, if forced to choose between, they're gonna go to school because they don't wanna fall behind, and which we understand completely, and so the 33 board actually voted not to change their calendar. That board does want to revisit though and start talking about elementary as a possible delay to September. If you know, Madawaska Elementary already is in a delayed start, so they were on that 2-plane. And I didn't know if you guys wanted to have those conversations here with elementary, or if you just want to say, hey, it is what it is, and let's plan accordingly.
We've had some of those conversations amongst ourselves already on the elementary, and just from the teachers' feedback on them missing those 2 weeks and how far it sets them back when they do come back from it, but I think we probably entertain starting elementary later, but keeping the high school as it is.
I did do a survey just because I know last meeting, you know, you all said, you know, it'd be nice to have a little more information, so I did poll the teachers just to see what their thoughts were. And I didn't differentiate between elementary and high school, but just so you can see, out of 92 education staff, 73 say that a delay to September would be good. Obviously, 19 said no. Do you think we can still support the farmers? 80 said yes, 12 said no. Do you support a proposed change? 73. So you can see the vast majority, and there's some good comments there, and I can break that out and share that with all of you, so that you can read through those. The same thing with this is the support staff, also in favor of that, and then the administrative staff also in favor of that. If you go through the concerns, so these people who have concerns here, it's all in relation to the farmers. You know, making sure that they're not harmed by their workforce, and so it's all about the same conversations we're having. So just data for us to consider, and if we want to have those conversations now or later, if you want me to gather more data, if you want me to do a parent survey, I can do whatever you guys think would be best to help you make a decision.
Personally, Ben, I know that at the last meeting you indicated that we had 47 students at the high school level who were actively involved in potato harvest. That's a lot of that's a lot of kids. That's one full class. And my sense is that, barring anything that we might do at the elementary level, I think we should not change the schedule for the high school level. I think to try to impose extra work on them and try to push the agenda with them, and they're going to be stressed out already. And if it's going to impact academically, and it's going to obviously impact sports and other extracurricular activities they might be involved in, we just need to go and continue to support the farmers. That would be my position. What we do with the elementary, that might be slightly different. But at this point, my sense is we have to support the local farmer.
I did look at the calendar and just for the sake of it, I looked at what would it mean if we looked at a September 1st start, but kept the harvest break as a break and then built it on at the end of June. It would have taken us right to July 2nd.
Oh, God.
So I don't know that that is even an option. June is tough enough to educate
They
them.
can help plant.
So we did look at some other things too, but that just doesn't make any sense whatsoever, so.
I think for me, my reservations around harvest, I have no issue with the high school. It's just, I know elementary school teachers have spoken to me and pulled me aside and say, our little kids, 2 weeks of a break after starting for 2 weeks sets them back like they didn't even do the first 2 weeks. You've lost 2 weeks of school. And given, you know, the challenges our students face already and what we're looking forward to, if we could get our elementary school kids out of harvest, it's not gonna have any adverse impact on our farmers. It's not gonna have any adverse impact on anyone. I think the teachers I've spoken to historically, I've talked to all of my kids' teachers, and they're always like, yeah, it's hard. And, cause I got little kids, I mean,
Oh, yeah.
3rd and 5th grade, so, yeah, but I think as they get older, their ability to not regress, I'm not an educator, but I'm assuming it gets better as you get older, not,
Yeah.
you know. But kindergarten, it's a big deal to lose 2 weeks. I mean,
Especially right when you finally get into rhythm,
Yeah.
you stop.
yeah, well, I just think like when I was a kid and we rode in the car from St. Francis to Fort Kent, that took 3.5 years. You know? And now it's like, 15, 20 minutes, doesn't seem like that long, but 2 weeks to a kindergartner is forever.
Yeah.
And for our preparations, with regards to the guidelines from the governor and all that, and I've already shared that with you. Right now, August limits us to that 50 number. And all indications point to September being the new phase that's gonna kind of open that up with Aroostook County being that green. So I think it would probably be a good direction to go to. We can crunch numbers and get some actual figures for you on transportation costs. I don't know if that's not a problem for Lucy, I don't think. So we can have that for you. A little later, you'll find out we have to actually meet next week to sign warrants. So maybe we can have that quick discussion during that meeting, so we'll have some numbers for you to just ponder over for the elementary, if we
Sure.
bless those extra 2 weeks.
Let's do that.
So you're not gonna change it for the high school? Can these folks, like, do they?
I don't know, I gotta give Steve a hard time, but maybe, I'm not sure.
Can I ask a question? So what, like, you said MSD 33 said they're gonna do it, Madawaska's already said they wanna change their schedule. Because of the tech center, doesn't that have to be the same schedule?
It does, so I've gotta go back to Madawaska and get them to understand the regional impact of that, and I think they'll be receptive, I hope. If not, I've gotta find out guidance from the department about what that means if we have a separate calendar for the CTV center, and I don't know what the answer will be. Yep. I'm confident. Thank you. Thank you all.
I'm making a motion to vote on anything here.
No, I think Ben's gonna collect more information
Yeah.
between now and then.
Moving on to new business.
Under new business, we do have some new hires that we'll table to the end of the meeting. So we'll table that, and we'll go right to item B. Item B is something we do every year. It's just considered to transfer no more than 5% of the budget between cost centers. For this current school year, it just gives us flexibility to close out those accounts and make sure that we have the money where it needs to belong. So I will entertain a motion for that.
So we're going to get water. Maybe she doesn't like your water.
Can we make a motion without Toby being continued?
Barry's actually here, so you actually chose.
Then I'll
to
make-
choose first.
I'll make the motion.
You have a quorum anyway, you have four.
Right. So I'll make the motion to approve the transfer of no more than 5% of the budget between cost centers for the 2019-2020 current year school budget.
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor? Very thumbs
I'm
up.
so proud of him.
Very thumbs up.
You got a good thumb, Barry.
Could have been his foot.
Sorry, you're on mute.
Is that his foot?
Budget meeting recommended?
Okay, so if in your packet I put, I'll show you this document here first. It's the one with the red circles. This is a document that shows us, because of the governor's latest executive order regarding public meetings and how to hold them, this is kind of a guiding document. So I circled RSU, SAD, CSD because we're an SAD, so we fall into that category. Then in the second column, I circled budget meeting with BVR because we're required every year to do a budget meeting and then have a BVR afterwards. So that's where we fall in. And that brings us to the third column, which is our choices. Choice 1, we can suspend the meeting and only have a referendum preceded by a public comment at least 7 days prior to referendum. And option 2 is we still have our regular meeting followed by the BVR following social distance guidelines. Originally, I thought, if we could bypass the public meeting and just go to referendum, we go to referendum anyway. So why, go through that extra step? Until we saw what the warrant article would look like. So this is what voters would see at the ballot when they go vote on our budget. If you look at in your packet for this one, it would actually be a 3-pager that they do just for the school. They would see every article cost center broken down. They would have the separation for adult ed, school lunch. Everything would be separated into parts. And only at the end would they ultimately get to a question that says, do you approve this budget based on all these cost centers? And when I sought out some guidance on this, basically the information I was given is, if somebody doesn't like one thing in there, like they don't like the number for facilities maintenance, or they don't like the number for other instruction, or they have no idea why special education is that high, they're probably going to be more apt to vote no on the whole budget because they weren't part of an education process for this. So the education part of that is the public meeting, where you get to educate folks on these are the numbers you're going to see and why they are what they are. So option 1 would be we have this for a ballot, and our voters are voting on all of this with numbers put into it. Option 2 is a public meeting with social guidelines, followed by a regular referendum. When I sought out information on this, and how do you limit 50 people to a public meeting but still not impede on their American right to vote? And the answer to that is you have an alternate location for voting. So picture, if you will, Fort Kent Community High School Gymnasium. We let the first 50 people through. After 50, the next 50 people go to Fort Kent Elementary at the cafeteria. And there, they would have a live stream of the meeting that's happening here, and they would have the technology set up. I've already spoken to Chaz about it. We can make this happen, I think. And we would have voters in 2 areas voicing their questions to the moderator and also voting at that location, and we would be okay. We could even set up a third, but we've never really had more than 100 voters, so I don't think a third location would be necessary, but we could set up a third location in this room if we wanted to. But essentially you would have your public meeting as normal with some remote sites so that folks could listen to the information and have it. Then we'd have a referendum vote. So our options are, do we put this before the voters without a public meeting, or do we have a public meeting with some remote things in place and then have our voters go to the ballot after that?
And we still have the same moderator.
We would have the same moderator, yep. He's already confirmed that he would be willing to do that.
So where our budget is equal to or close to what it was last year, are we in any hurry?
The town,
Yes.
like I've had town managers tell me they want this done ASAP,
Yeah.
so.
So I had a conversation with Susie today. who was also speaking on behalf of Rodney in New Canada. In order for the town to assess their taxes, they're on a time crunch. And originally I had said, I think we're proposing August, I had pitched the date August 10 for a referendum vote. And she says, oh, it's gonna be really difficult for us if it's that late. So she even asked for a week earlier than that, the last week of July. So yeah, for the town's sake, it's tough to assess those taxes.
It could be pretty overwhelming for most people to go in and look at this.
Can we have a cover slip or cover sheet to it, I
and try
mean?
to make-
You can only have this.
Well, you can have that.
Listen, I've learned adding more paper never helps.
Well, you could just say if you vote no for one, it doesn't pass, you know?
Yeah, no.
So I would advise that we have the public meeting, remote public meeting. In your document, this is what I'm proposing, so you should have this right here in front of you. I would propose a budget meeting Wednesday, July 15. That meeting would be held in the gym for the first 50 participants. Additional participants would overflow to the CAF at Fort Kent Elementary. And then we would have the budget referendum on Tuesday, July 27. That works really well for the town of Fort Kent and New Canada. Every town is on a different cycle, so it's different, but it does work well for those. And if we agree to that, we would have to schedule a quick 5 to 10 meeting next week to sign those warrants, so that we can get all the posting dates met. What say you?
I don't think having the giant ballot's a good idea.
Yeah.
Not at all. It's very overwhelming.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we thought so too. So we're good to go with Plan B then?
Yes.
Or actually, the regular plan, what we do every year?
Yeah.
What date would you like to meet next week? I'm proposing an AM meeting, but I don't know what your schedules are. I had said 7, it can be earlier if you want earlier. Kerr likes to wake up at 4:25, so we can get a.
AM meeting
So
is
you can call
better.
Peter?
If you're bringing coffee from Tim Hortons, I'm okay. But,
Yeah,
Right.
Mondays and Wednesday are better for me.
It makes no difference at all to me.
so Monday the 29th?
Yeah.
Yep.
Lucy, is that good for you? Okay, so we'll send a calendar invite. 7 AM is good too?
Yep.
And is that just to sign warrants?
Just sign warrants. And if we want, we'll have some numbers for the transportation for extra 2 weeks.
I'd rather have that at a time when people can see what we're doing.
Okay,
Yeah.
sure.
Thank you.
Just the sign warrants.
So we don't have to have a motion here. I mean, we're just,
If you want to formalize the motion to go with a budget hearing on the 15th and a referendum on the 27th, that would seal it. I think you should make that motion, Kurt.
I can read it. I'll make a motion that Wednesday, July 15, 2020, a meeting will be held at Community High School gym for the first 50 participants. Additional participants will overflow into cafeteria at Fort Kent Elementary School. Community High School cafeteria is not available due to school lunch setup. Is that part of the?
No, that's okay.
Okay, all right.
And then a budget referendum.
And a budget referendum on Tuesday, July 27, 2020.
Perfect.
That's it.
Second.
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 Any discussion? All in favor?
Did we vote? Missed that piece.
Now, we would move into executive session. And the first one,
You wanna make a
Are we
motion?
doing the,
Yeah,
are we
yeah.
doing the board officers?
We're the board
oh
officers.
yeah, let's do the board officers, thanks. Thanks.
It's not in the.
Gary really wants the board officers to be done.
Look at
too.
I moved it.
So you have a list of the current board officers and the standing committees for this current school year. Barry, if you wanna talk, you should unmute yourself so that you can talk. I know you have a lot to say about this. You're gonna have to click the microphone button.
Thanks, Barrett, that was great.
You're gonna have to click the microphone button.
Appreciate that.
There we go.
There you
How's
go.
that? Pretty good. You guys can hear me?
Yes, Yeah. we can.
Ah,
Ha,
it's amazing.
It is amazing.
Okay.
Mr. Sibley just got done telling us that you want to remain chairman for another year. Is that true?
You guys are crazy. I can't hear a thing.
Oh, we can't.
I'm just kidding.
I don't wanna hear.
What are your thoughts?
Mine?
Yeah.
My thoughts is that you need to get some new people in there. Come on, Mr. Sibley. I nominate Gary Sibley as chairman.
I'd second that.
Second by.
Oh, he can't, you can't, can he vote?
Yes.
Barry can.
This allows him.
Okay.
Yeah.
I second.
Hey, Toby, there's only so many things I can do. Voting is one of them.
Good, just wanted to make sure. I didn't want to have us accidentally keep you for another year.
Yeah, I know. Listen, I'm on your side, Joe.
All right. I second that then.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
A lot of friends you have there, Mr. Sibley.
All opposed? Gary?
You're the man.
Okay, vice chairman.
Vice chair?
I move Sarah be the vice chair.
Second that.
Second.
Good one, Barry.
Thank you. That was fast.
Good with that?
You get an extra tag, name tag next to it.
As long as you don't ever not show up.
All those in favor?
Thank you, sir.
Unanimous.
I can't find my thumb.
Do we want
Yeah, there it
standing
is.
committees? Is there anyone
There.
who wants to get off of one of their standing committees or change their appointment to a standing committee, or do we want to keep them the way that they are?
I'd like to get on the policy committee.
Barry, Toby, or Kurt, does anyone want to get off the policy committee?
I'm gonna stay on.
Say that again, please.
Barry, would you like to get off of the policy committee so that Jake can get on the policy committee?
I'm all set with that.
That's a yes?
Been 4.
Okay.
Yes.
Jake, you're on. Any other changes?
I think there's also a treasurer to the board, and currently is Keith.
I nominate Keith.
Second that.
A second.
Yes, I second. Here.
Any discussion? All in favor?
You're the man, Keith.
Thank you good for not showing up.
The rest is good?
Good meeting dates, we have to do anything?
No, I just gave you the meeting dates that we've already approved for next year. Obviously, we're gonna have something in July, but that's gonna be to be determined.
It's gonna be the retreat, right?
Yeah, and we do need to talk about the retreat for sure.
Thanks, Gary.
Always think maybe, Jake.
With where we are with the COVID times, do you feel missing a month or whatnot is a big deal? Or if we need to, we can get together? Like, for example, there's a gap in October.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think, and we had done that by design, that we have the flexibility of calling a meeting, I mean, like this one was called, so.
Okay.
We can do that. So I think the first executive session would be 1 MRSA, section 4056A, to discuss duties of officials, appointees, or employees. Would that fit? I believe so. So I get a motion for that?
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor?
Okay, Barry, you're gonna get something on your screen that's gonna say, please join the breakout room. You're gonna have to make sure you click the button, okay?